Engross substitute House Bill 1149. The Secretary will read.
An act relating to the prevention of cruelty to animals, amending RCW 16.52.
Last line.
Title 1, RCW 77.15.550
Amendments at the desk. Amendment number 0239. The Secretary will read.
On page 11, after line 14,
Last
insert
line.
the following. On probable cause.
Senator Wagner.
Mr. President, I move Amendment 0239 be adopted.
Senator Wagner moves adoption of Amendment number 0239. Remarks, Senator Wagner.
Well, thank you, Mr. President. The underlying bill talks about animal fighting, which is something that I think we all agree is abhorrent, but it also makes a lot of other changes in the bill, things about feeding schedules and shelter availability. All good things, but some of them are very subjective. And all this amendment does is allows an officer, requires an officer, to use the standard of probable cause, get my standards right, before seizing an animal. I think it protects people in a couple of ways. It protects the officer because it's a clear legal standard that every officer will understand. And municipalities, jurisdictions are different. In my city, we have an animal control officer. In some more rural areas of the state, you may have a deputy for every 10 square miles who doesn't deal with animals all that often. This just sets a clear standard for the officer to have a precedent to rely on when he takes action or does not take action. And it also allows a standard for people to understand. In a theoretical sense, this would all be laid out very properly and no one would ever make a mistake. But in a real sense, neighbors sometimes who don't get along, don't like the way you mowed your lawn or what color you painted the house or your dog barking at a certain time of day, use things like this as a weapon. And I think this puts the officer in a much better position, and it also puts the owner of the animal in a better position. Thank you, Mr. President.
Further remarks, Senator Dingra.
Thank you, Mr. President. Rising in support of this amendment, and I want to thank Senator Wagner for fixing the burden of proof on that one to a preponderance of the evidence. And I think it works very well with the rest of the bill. Thank you.
There are no further remarks. Senator Nobles.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move to excuse Senator Leas.
Senator Nobles has moved to excuse Senator Leas. Hearing no objection, Senator Leas is excused. Question before the Senate is adoption of amendment number 0239. As many are in favor will signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it. The amendment is adopted. Further amendments, amendment number 0232, the Secretary will read.
On page 15, line 1, after 2,
Last
strike
line.
animal.
Senator Dingra.
Thank you, Mr. President. I urge adoption of Amendment 232. That it be adopted. I urge adoption.
Senator Dingra moves adoption of amendment number 0232. Remarks, Senator Dingra.
Thank you, Mr. President. This is an amendment that's agreed upon language between Defense and the Animal Rights Organization that limits the liability to the person that is responsible for the animal. And so it really makes sure that, if there's a roommate that has no responsibility for the animal, that they're not caught up in this. So it's a good amendment, and I urge support.
Further remarks, Senator Holy.
Thank you, Mr. President. We do support. It is a good amendment.
There are no further remarks. Question before the Senate is adoption of amendment number 0232. As many are in favor will signify by saying aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it. The amendment is adopted. Further amendments, amendment number 0268. The Secretary will read.
On page 15, after line 14,
Last
insert
line.
the following. Defined in our internal references accordingly.
Senator Fortunato.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move adoption of 0268. The amendment be adopted.
Senator Fortunato moves adoption of amendment number 0268. Remarks, Senator Fortunato.
Thank you, Mr. President. Not as controversial as some of the other ones. This seeks to clarify that basically a hobby farm. So the bill focuses on care and treatment of animals, and one of the things it specifies is adequate shelter, et cetera. However, some livestock, Mr. President, which is currently covered in the bill, is exempt from that because cows are out in the field, horses are out in the field, et cetera. What this does is it attempts to add that individual who owns these types of animals. So basically a hobby farm. So if you have a hobby farm, you have a couple of cows, or you have some sheep, or you have a horse, you use the same standard husbandry practices, you're covered under this bill. So thank you, Mr. President. Urge your support.
Further remarks, Senator Dingra.
Thank you, Mr. President. Unfortunately, standing in opposition to this amendment, by simply adding the word individual, this amendment actually expands immunity to what is currently restricted to animal husbandry practices, and it opens it up to all individuals. And so it opens the door for anyone to claim that neglect or abuse is simply an accepted practice. The current law already protects responsible farmers and ranchers who follow established animal husbandry practices, and this amendment basically threatens to reverse years of progress in strengthening animal cruelty laws in the state of Washington. And it would significantly weaken our laws, and it undermines the intent and the efficacy of the existing protections that we have against animal neglect or abuse in this state. And so it asks for a no vote.
Senator Wagner.
Mr. President, rising in support of the amendment. What the amendment addresses is the slaughter of animals. So it may not be a pleasant topic for everyone, but it's a fact of life that many animals are raised for food. And they're not all commercially raised. This just allows an individual who may be raising rabbits or chickens or whatever on a very small scale, not a commercial scale, to slaughter them for food and not be subject to a crime. I urge adoption.
There are no further remarks. The question before the Senate is adoption of amendment number 0268. As many are in favor will signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, no. No. The noes appear to have it. The noes have it. The amendment is not adopted. Senator Dingra.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move that the rules be suspended, that engrossed substitute House Bill 1149 as amended be advanced to third reading, the second reading considered the third, and the bill be placed on final passage.
Senator Dingra moves that the rules be suspended and gross substitute House Bill 1149 as amended by the Senate be advanced to third reading, second reading considered the third, and the bill be placed on final passage. Hearing no objection, so ordered. And gross substitute House Bill 1149 as amended by the Senate on third reading and final passage. Remarks, Senator Dingra.
Thank you, Mr. President. This bill is really about making sure that we are protecting our animals, and it is about expanding the crime of animal cruelty and animal fighting, but it also adds other things to make sure we're protecting our animals from starvation, making sure they get appropriate medical care, and making sure that their sanitation conditions are humane. It does expand the severity of animal fighting penalties, and it also ensures, Mr. President, that once you are convicted of animal fighting, that you're prohibited from owning animals for a period of time based on your the crime that you're charged with. That makes a lot of sense, because when you have a history of abusing animals, I think it's important to make sure that you don't continue to own additional animals. And with Senator Wagner's amendment, I think it makes a lot of sense that officers now can go in there and impound a domestic confined animal when they realize that the animal's life could be in danger. And with that, I urge the body's support.
Further remarks, Senator Holy.
Well, thank you, Mr. President. After some adjustments to this bill, erasing some of the earlier concerns, this bill appears to have widespread support coming out unanimous from the other side. I'm going to urge support here.
If there are no further remarks, question before the Senate is final passage of a gross substitute House Bill 1149 as amended. The Secretary will call the roll.
Alvarado, Bateman, Benke, Braun, Chapman, Christian, Cleveland, Conway, Cortez, Dingra, Dozier, Fortunato, Frame, Gildon, Gaynor, Hansen, Harris, Asagawa, Holy, Kaufman, King, Krishna Dawson, Leas, Lovelet, Lubbock, McEwen Drew, McEwen Jim, Mazzal, Nobles, Orwell, Peterson, Ramos, Richelli, Robinson, Saldana, Solomon, Schessler, Shoemake, Short, Slatter, Stanford, Torres, Trudeau, Valdez, Wagoner, Warnick, Wellman, Wilson Clare, Wilson Jeff. Mr. President, there are 47 aye, 1 nay, 1 excused.
Having received a constitutional majority and gross substitute House Bill 1149 as amended by the Senate is declared passed. The title of the bill will be the title of the act.